Hi everybody, so another day of dev videos. Now I skipped the last few days as I've been working really hard to catch up with schoolwork and get mods updated to 112. I haven't made a huge amount of progress, but I have started on updating the fluid modular and wooden buckets up to the latest version. I'm on 1.9 right now, so we've already went through 1.8. The 1.8 version does function. The 1.9 version sort of functions too. Both versions still need more work as things like the item and various other things are not rendering correctly. Let me go ahead and launch the game before I continue, and I'll show what I'm talking about real quick before we get back into work. Now, I do expect to potentially be interrupted during this video as I am waiting for a package to be delivered, but I was not told what time it was, and I was told simply that I could potentially be called before they drop it off, but the likelihood is probably low. So yeah, so if there's an interruption in the video, that's pretty much why. Um, Other than this, yeah, there's not really much else going on. I mean, we've got 3 mods updated to 112, which is kind of where we were last time. I did go through and do another pass on them as they did require a little bit more work. With the new Forge registration changes, there was some changes that were required, and I didn't really show those, but they were pretty straightforward. All you had to do is go register all your items and blocks via event fire rather than the old way, which is calling game registry directly. I've actually pre-initialized this mod right here for the 1.9 version. I'm going to have to backport to 1.8, but this actually does use two methods for registration, and these will eventually have an event passed into them as the parameter to actually do this. These will actually end up being static. I've also dramatically redesigned the fluid modular. There's now events fired to let other mods register their own content. I'm no longer going to be using the internal message system for this, so if there's anybody dependent on the fluid modular, that's changed. And there's a lot of other little tweaks and stuff. For example, we now have a default material, which is iron, that's built into the mod that can't be disabled, but it is uncraftable, so you don't have to worry about it messing with your mod pack or whatever. Fluids are now also registered by default, so milk, fuel, and oil are actually registered by the mod by default. It can be disabled if you want to use another mod's fluid. For example, these don't exactly look good. I am going to work on the textures. This is milk, that's fuel, that's oil. I mean, oil and fuel don't look too bad. I am going to get a thicker texture for the oil, and I am going to probably go back to using the milk's default texture for this rather than trying to use the generated texture. So I am using pretty much a generated texture for all three of these. They're just colorized thanks to Forge. There has been a lot of issues with these. I've actually noted on Twitter several times that there's quite a few problems with fluid rendering. If you set the color to 0x and I think 5fs, this will turn invisible. It's weird, but it kind of works. So yeah, I mean, these do work at least. They do function properly. I need to fix the particles for them. There's supposedly like a way you can change the particle for that. And let me turn the rain off. So get that real quick. And yeah, I've been working on this. So the buckets do work, by the way. So these actually are functional. Unfortunately, they say they're wooden buckets, even though the translation keys for wooden buckets don't exist. I don't know how in the world those got translated. It's probably something I overlooked. I haven't yet to look at it. But we do have the bucket here, and it does work with several fluids, although the texture colors and the fluids aren't quite right, and I'm going to work on this. I do have a custom model baker for 1.8 plus for this mod, so we can do whatever we really want to make this look whatever we want. But the big problem is I'm trying to be fixing for the last 2 days is the fact that the items don't render correctly, and I'm not exactly getting help from anybody to fix this either, and there's no tutorials that really explain it. Once you start using a custom model loader, the general consensus is you're on your own, and then nobody really wants to help you. There are a couple people that I know that actually do know what's going on, but I think they've kind of decided to ignore me after I said I'm updating mods to all versions and not just jumping straight to 112. Everybody you ask wants you just to go straight to 112, and it's a little annoying in my opinion because I want to hit up every version so that any of you guys that are stuck in certain versions waiting on mods to update can download and install these mods, but nobody seems to understand that that is a legit concern for a user base. They were like, nah, you just go ahead and update and then say fuck it all your users. Yeah, I don't really want to do that, but yeah, so we're trying to get this to fix, and I've been trying a little bit of everything. And one interesting thing, by the way, if you look at the underside of this item, it actually renders correctly, and then you look at the top side, it renders incorrectly. I have no clue what's causing that. The thing is, if we actually go look at the code is a semi-bit of a clone of the Forge's bucket render. So Forge actually has a built-in bucket creation system and render system. It doesn't work for our case, and people keep telling me to use the Forge one, but I'm like, nah, I want to use my NBT driven one, but they're like, NBT driven stuff doesn't work anymore. It's impossible to ask for help on the Forge channel, basically. But yeah, so we get this, so it creates textures, it registers textures, it then bakes the model here, and it does various other things. This is the same exact way that Forges works, but I have a feeling like I'm missing something in here. When we do the base, so let me actually close it. But the base location, so which is the actual bucket, does seem to be working just fine. It's the liquid that doesn't seem to function properly. And it may have to do something with maybe these Z locations aren't quite right. We actually can check this, since I did actually somewhat clone the Forge one here. Although it doesn't work exactly the same, but we can go ahead and look at and see what it's doing over here. And I actually have typed in the wrong thing. So we want model Dynabucket. There we go. So I want to say maybe they changed the Z fight or the Z values here. So let's go ahead and copy these guys and then throw them up here. And they look, yeah, they're exactly the same. So nothing's really changed there. So it doesn't really make sense why we're having some difficulties. Because I mean, it's grabbing pretty much all of the same values. And yet, what we're getting as a result is a much darker color on one side and then a lighter color on the other side. The lighter color is the one I want because that's the one the old textures actually use. And to be honest, what I'm probably going to end up doing with this is I'm going to figure out some way to detect for missing textures. And I'm going to just go ahead and use the old texture system. If we actually drop this and we go to the items, it actually was in the right folder there. Items. We actually have textures for a little bit of everything. Like if we open it, this is what we're actually using, I believe. Or it's not this one, it's this one. So we're using this as what we're using for the dynamic colors. But we actually do have things. So we have like an oil texture. We should have a fuel one too. And we have a fuel one. And these are pretty much identical to the old bucket one, or the old BuiltCraft textures. Although not exactly the same, and I believe the newer versions have changed their textures. But we have things for Tinkers, we have things for, I believe, Blood Magic, and a whole bunch of other stuff in here. And I probably just going to end up using these ones because they do look better. I mean, look, that looks really nice. The only disadvantage is if you use this system, the textures do animate. And I'll show that next time we reload. But first things first is I actually want to try to get something to work. I forget what I was actually going to do here. I had this folder open and I started recording and completely lost my train of thought. Because we have this JSON here, and I actually want to load it, but there was something I need to do to get it to load correctly. Complete train of thought lost. Oh well, so I guess we're gonna, oh yeah, I know what I was gonna do. I was gonna go open my folder in GitHub, or my dev folder here, and go look up what the textures look like for the newer versions here. So should be some defaults here. No. That's an unfortunate process when you go to look at Minecraft stuff. It's like, nah, we're not going to look anything like you expect us to look like. Yeah, so that's 1.12 versions look completely different. Let me pop back to 1.8 and I might get a better result. Actually, it's not 1.8. It's not the block states I want to look at. I want to look at the models. And then we want to look at something like this. So it's this stuff I wanted to grab real quick, because this is what I'm having problems with, is the third-person stuff. And I think if I go ahead and, let's not reformat that, and I go ahead and I grab some defaults or something, and I think Arcade Door is just a regular item. So that should work. What we need to do is we need to force it to load this, and I'm going to have to change up how my code runs. Because right now what we're doing is when we register, we're registering with pretty much one model for all object type system, and I'm going to switch this to instead of grabbing up this model, I'm going to switch it to grab up this model. And we're actually going to, I'm going to get rid of this system. I'm following several tutorials, and unfortunately when you do that, you kind of more or less end up with, actually I want that modular, but I want to change up it to grab bucket.json. Yeah, I think it'll work. I think I could put like a slash and tell it to go look in the items directory. So if maybe I do like item and then slash, it'll result in a little better, a little quicker search path. I'll see if that works. If it completely breaks, then we know we screwed up altogether. But at this point, it's pretty much an experimentation because I don't know what I'm doing, and finding resources is almost impossible. Like the only resource I've been able to find is some tutorials by, I think it's Grey Ghost is who does this guy. Yeah, I think it is. That's what his name is. But he's got some tutorials. I've been looking through them, and I've been looking through some McJetties. McJetty doesn't seem to have any custom models, at least not in his 1.9 branch, which is unfortunate. May actually go dig around. So like he has some tutorials here, but I think his tutorials are kind of limited. So you go to items. Yeah, he's got first item, multi-item, and like simple item. And that doesn't really help us out because we're dealing with something that's a little bit more on the advanced side, and the amount of tutorials I'm finding are squat. Like Forge doesn't even have an indication to indicate there is even a custom model system at all. So if you go into their tutorials, they just go, okay, you can render items this way or that way, and it doesn't really work. Yeah, I want to say it loaded the model, but at the same time, I have this feeling like no matter what you do, it's going to just function correctly. Like, we're not getting any errors. How does this... Okay, so we know it's loaded because of the fact that it does still function. But what I need to do is I need to check to see what it is loading. So we're going to go here, and I'm going to put a break line here. That's the reason why this code is this way, by the way. You could actually just return this line down here, but I put this here so I can break line whenever I need to. And this is, I mean, most of this video is just going to be me trying to fix this, so if you guys get bored of this stuff, this would be the point when to exit, or at least fast forward to the end to see if I fix it. I know most of the people I ask who actually watch my videos, that's what they do. They just kind of skip through them. It's the reason why the YouTube algorithm doesn't promote my videos, is that the watch minutes are pretty much really low. I don't really like that about the algorithm, but I do admit that these videos are not entertaining, so eh. Speaking of which, sometime tonight we'll be streaming some actual Minecraft gameplay and probably putting it up on the channel as well. I'll be on the All the Creators server, and I'll be playing on that. So see what goes on. Item. I have a feeling like this doesn't even give a crap like that we have a file. Yeah, because like there's definitely not a bucket model there yet. It's like, oh yeah, we've got a file, we're working. I have an idea how to test this in a second to see what in the world it's doing. Anyways, I'm gonna remove this because that works. Oh wait, that doesn't work. Hold on, that's the wrong spot. I need to remove this piece. So that's the correct one. Sorta. You know, that could be the problem I've had this whole time, is it's looking in a certain package for this, and it's not finding this, and it's working anyways because of how the model loader is set up. So the model is set up that it knows where certain textures are, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this to a different texture. That way I can check to make sure that it actually is using the correct texture or not. This is probably going to break things, though. We are in the fluid module, by the way. This is related to wooden buckets, so this is what we'll get the mod updated here eventually. Source, main, resources, assets, VE, textures, items. And what I want to do is I just really quickly want to take this guy, open him with GIMP, and then change it to a pink texture. I'm tempted to use the new Forge textures too, because they actually have a pretty decent texture for them. You know, actually, what I probably should do is I probably should hunt down maybe King Lemming. I think he might be able to help me with this. That's the wrong one. Actually, you know what? I could use Colorize. What the hell is that? So
Valve had some more.
Ignore that. Get yelled at for probably having an audio in there. So yeah, I was clicking on a comment. I was like, "What?" Oh, but it's like, yeah, they're talking about Kickstarter stuff in the comments on one of the videos I commented on. It's not important. That'll work. That's too bright. Well, it'd be fine. So file, export as, and we're just going to call it missing. And I'll probably come back through here and I'll actually make it look like the missing icon, but still look like a bucket. So you know that at least the bucket is functioning, but that it's still missing a texture. So close that, get rid of it. So discard changes. So yeah, we got our missing bucket there now. And yeah, that looks correct. So we're going to go ahead and launch it and see what texture it tries to use. If it uses the default bucket texture, then that tells me that it is not referencing the correct texture. Although I do have to admit the texture referencing is based on the material. So the model file probably doesn't even matter no matter what in here. So we're probably just wasting time on testing. Same thing for the liquid location. It is based on the actual bucket material. So once again, it's pulled from that rather than pulled from the resource file. I do plan to actually make them use these resource files eventually, but I have to figure out how to do that, and it's going to be a while. Inevitably, we may end up with a custom JSON format rather than using the standard Forge one, and what you would have is the same content folder used by the other Volts Engine mods. So you'll have like a content folder, and then there will be something called a bucket material, and then you'll just go ahead and go, okay, we want a new bucket material called wood, and here's all of our properties, and here's our material class, so you can load the class rather than that. And I plan to go that way eventually because that'll allow people to make their own bucket materials without understanding how to program, and that's really important because mod pack makers like to have a lot of customizations, and as a mod developer, I can't support a huge amount of customizations on my own. It's already becoming struggling to support as many mods as I actually do. So we do know it is working. It's grabbing the right texture. So we don't have any missing textures. So we're just grabbing that iron bucket. The problem is it is still not doing anything we want it to do. So I'm going to say it's not even pulling transformations from the correct file whatsoever. And this may have to do with just kind of how this works. And I legitly just have no clue where to go with this. Oh, I think somebody may have... Surprisingly, people are talking about stuff that actually is related to what I'm doing. Like you combine textures apparently in your custom system, which is kind of what I'm doing here. I create the I think I grabbed the atlas. The thing is, here's the transformations, and this is kind of where some of my problem is stemming from, is that I'm not getting any transformations. So when we actually click up here and we click load, and I'll show this with some debug, this is empty. And that means I'm getting no transforms for the cameras. At least I don't think I am. Yeah, so I could, in theory, maybe just manually do it, but I haven't found an example of how to manually do it yet. And I don't really know of any mods that actually do this kind of stuff, which is what is really making this hard. And I'm about to just go to a manual approach for this. And the manual approach would be to get rid of the dynamic model loader, which is what I'm using right now, and go to a pure manual approach, which would be tedious beyond all reason. It basically means for every bucket material we have, we would have to support each fluid manually, and that means you would not end up with the results you want. And it's, yeah. But yeah, so we go this way, and you see the size of the map is 0, which means I'm not getting any transformations, even though it goes iPerspect for where a model get transformations. And let's actually compare this to let's go grab the Forge one. So model dyna bucket, and I want to see exactly what they're doing again. And this may be my problem altogether, is that I'm relying on a Forge class to function properly, but I assume it works because I assume people use this, so there shouldn't be anything wrong with it. Yet at the same time, something isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And I'm pretty sure we actually are using this class. So actually it's in 4 spaces. So we should be getting some rotations off this. Maybe it's the wrong rotations? Let's pop up here and maybe find a different item real quick and look at its rotations and make sure I didn't just copy something that actually looks identical to what I just did by some sheer fluke of luck. I want to grab something like a bowl. That looks the same. And yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything wrong with that. So we're getting our parent model, which is like the bucket dot. Actually, you know what? I don't think I was supposed to put JSON on any of this. That actually may be like part of my problem. Is that it is trying to load, but for some reason it's not loading correctly. Let's where's my model loader? And let's put a line here. And there's got to be a way to handle this. Problem is, just none of the tutorials seem to really contain what I'm looking for, and all of them use pretty much the default system. So let's go see. Yeah, it is using the correct thing. So it's going models item bucket. So that looks correct, I guess, or assume. Let's put another line down here. The thing is, it's really hard to confirm if it's pulling. You know, one way we can actually check this. Let's pop open one of the other mods that we know that actually does function, and check to see how I actually programmed it to function. So of course it's going to be wooden shears because we know wooden shears works, and wooden shears is the only mod I have that actually has some form of customization to it. Has a custom mesh definition. So it goes resource location, so it goes, yeah, so this is, there's nothing special about it. So yeah, it goes wooden shears. So you don't have to put JSON on the end of this. That's one thing I wanted to check. But we still are in a bit of a pickle here because, well, I can't tell if it's actually loading the file. So if we look at how this functions, at what point does it actually load the JSON files? Or am I supposed to do something inside of here to load the JSON files? I know we're getting textures here. I want to see. So we get loading models. There's some cache, some get models. Primary method to iModel instance. Resource argument will be directly. Model arguments will be loaded through the block state system. So we get actual location. In this case, it's that. I'm assuming this, if you have a resource package, is going to change for you. And it finds what model loader you want to load. Now, of course, there's some error handling if it doesn't load. It then grabs the model. So I have a theory that I'm actually supposed to handle the loading of the file itself. But I can't seem to, like, if I actually go and we look at the custom model system. Actually, what is in here? On resource manager reload. Oh, interesting. So if you actually sit here and we go through this, and we look at various other ones. So I've looked at a few of these. Like I've looked at model fluid, doesn't do anything. Let's see what this does. Oh, here we go. So we actually do have a little different handling here. So we go model location equals model missing. Okay, model equals get resource path. Starts with /models. I'm assuming it's actually a wrapper though. It says vanilla loader. Resource location, get domain. That's armatures. So I don't think it has anything to do with what we're doing. Model block, load model. Let's actually take a look at this guy. So yeah, here we actually are starting to see a bit of different pieces of something. I don't know what this something is though. So get resource path. What is get resource path? And you're useless. Okay, so yeah, we're not getting a lot of information out of here. So this looks like this is figuring out what parent object you're trying to use. So that's not exactly what we're looking for either. That is at least cool that we found that though, because that does tell us a little bit more of the inner workings. But we're still not getting much closer. Let's take a look at this guy and see what he does. Resource.getInputStream. So it looks like we can actually load the model, and maybe that's what we need to do. There's a model wrapper. I'll see what the parser does. Okay, this is actually what loads the physical file for the B3D loader. I don't even know what type of models these actually are. I've seen them used in a couple mods, but I haven't taken the time to actually study them. I don't see anything special in here. Let's see, create the parser input stream, read fully, read fully. It looks like it's using bytes to do it, maybe. Well, it might be just reading in the system. See what this goes. He calls input that. Okay, parse.parse. Okay, so we're getting a little bit different thing here. So read header. Yeah, this looks like just a custom model loader. So let's look at something else and maybe a little more related. So I've looked at the layer system. Once again, the layer system doesn't do anything. So this is where it kind of gets confusing, is that I'm not really making a lot of headway on trying to figure out what is being done and how it functions and what you're supposed to do and if you can load or read the file. Because a lot of the instances or examples you find, just they don't. They do nothing on load. They just give you back an instance. And then the instance itself actually does stuff. So yeah, we build models here. We do some processing. So, I mean, the thing is, this actually does read some stuff in from the model location. So I assume it actually does something. And then if you get down to handle perspective, our code's identical. So none of this stuff is really different. This looks like this is wrapping to some base model. With this being called a layered system, I guess you take some and you render another layer on top of it. At least that's my assumption of what it's doing. But it does do processing. So if we go back to our system, which should close a few of these, we do actually process the models. This is where we load in the fluid and the material. Although this is actually injected into here, down here in the dynamic system, I think. No, it's actually done in this override system now. In 1.8 it's done down here, although in 1.9 they changed it towards a little different. So we are processing it here. We got to figure out what's wrong with our transforms. And on top of this, once we do the transforms done, I have to go completely replace the fluid container system. So they obsoleted this in this version, and then the next version is completely gone. So I've got to get rid of that. I don't even see, so when you do this, you don't even get an option to mess with transforms. At least I don't think you do. There's a simple model state. Oh, here's some transforms. So model.transforms. So how do we... Okay, so our transforms are right here. These are loaded in at what point? So these are created as part of our system. So we bake it. So the thing is, in theory, each of the models is baked for each state, but then we're not really getting a lot of different state variations. So I wonder what's going on between here. So I'm going to actually figure out where this is called from, particularly, and see if we can maybe reverse engineer the code, because if I'm not going to get much help from the Forge channel, although if I probably actually keep up with asking the same question over and over again, eventually somebody will get annoyed at me and answer. I don't mean repeatedly spamming it, I mean like asking every so often, because, well, I have this strong feeling that I am getting intentionally ignored because they know I'm sitting here in 1.9. Even though the only thing they're doing is hindering me from going to 1.10, because as soon as I get this fixed, I go to 1.10, and then when I get done with 1.10, I go to 11, and when I get done with 1.11, I go to 1.12. Though at this state, I'm about to just go straight to 1.12 and then fix it and then backport. because I think I'll get an easier time that way. And then if I go, hey, I'm actually doing 112, I think they actually might listen. So yeah, we're not getting any state. So actually, let's put it down here so I don't have to hit next line every so often. So it does load, so it bakes a single time. I think it just does that to make sure you actually have something. And it's reloading the model manager. Then we get a second bake. So here we get set up model registry. So is this where maybe it actually loads the models? So missing model bake. So it actually goes ahead and just looks like it bakes a missing model for you like right away. That seems unnecessary. And then it gets the default state of our model. So it actually does call our model to get default states. Okay, so let's see what happens when we actually get in game and see if it changes its behavior once you actually are in game. Okay, so looks like we got another break line. We still don't got any transforms, but we did figure out that there's a handle item state. Yeah, so this is where our override system actually comes into play. Now let's see what we got. So we got a model set. Yeah, that's our bake dynamic model. There's our parent, which is fluid bucket. It's a model fluid bucket. So that's, I mean, that's correct. And we got original bucket, which is, of course, this is actually got a formatting in here, which I don't really see anything important in there. Okay, so that's not going to help us. Transforms are still empty. Although we don't even have transforms passed in here. So there's get item with overrides. Render effect into GUI. So this is the GUI render code, and this is actually called by render hotbar. So this is not even what we want at all. We actually want to try to find the third person code. So yeah, we're still getting the render into GUI here. Still got hotbar code. I think it's actually going to be called repeatedly, even though it's kind of a little frustrating that it's going to rerun the same code over and over again. But it's like, what is rendering this? So what calls this to actually render? Because bake isn't being called to render that. So is bake not involved in here? So that, I think that might actually be the case. I think what we just need to do is just kind of cheat it. So down here, we actually get some transformations. So it goes handle perspective. So I want to see how this works. So there's ground. There's GUI. There's GUI, 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 ground, GUI, ground. Okay, so this is that's where our stuff is actually rendering. So we can toy with the perspective system. This also means if I'm holding this, I should see first person in here. Yes, first person hand, right. So what I think I want to do is try to hijack what's going on here. And actually, let's go in here and see what this does. It is a matricey system, which I gotta admit is a pain in my butt when it comes to this. I have toyed with matrices in actual game development, and I regret not studying mathematics better when I was in high school and in my current college classes, because I'm still studying this kind of stuff in college. But yeah. So there's handle perspective. Now I wonder if there's a way I can get access to a different kind of perspective. Because we're not getting anything in here, and when we actually get the transforms, so the transforms are completely empty. And I don't know what you do with the transforms. And the transforms is like TBSR transformation. So this is created with a matricey, so it is a matricey with various other things. It looks like we got different rotations, scale, translate. There's matrices in here, and you can do various things with them. There's transformation type. So here are our types. So I think at some point this isn't being populated by our model. And we got to find out a way to populate it. So I want to see if we can just do this and we can figure out where it's not loading. So here's our forge state model system. Okay, so we're actually getting somewhere with this actually. Default tool, default block, default item. So this is actually the transformation we are supposedly should be using, but it's not loading. And I am curious why, because if we go to, say for example, this guy. So this guy is what we actually should be using to set up everything. And this actually does say we are using default item. And so if we actually go to the block state, this is what we should be getting for our transformation map. The good thing is, if I really want to just cheat this real quick, I could just build this real quick and just take all this data. I have a feeling like that would be a horrible idea though. So what we need to do is figure out how can we get this to load. And why is it not loading? So there's a deserialize. So where are you called from? Oh wow, you're not called from anywhere useful. Okay, so there's a deserializer, JSON deserializer. This gives us back a forged block state variant deserialized. So if JSON.has model, JSON.get model is JSON null. Why are we not actually getting back where this is being called from properly? So sign strict JSON. There's JSON deserialized context. Let's see where this is used at. So we got a few different spots where this is implemented. There's item camera transformations. Okay, so, if we can just figure out how to get this to call on our model, it should fix it. Just can't figure out why we're not getting anything loaded. And what makes this actually even more difficult is the fact if you actually try to look up information on the loading process, like if we actually go here and we go figure out what calls this, we're not, actually hold on, we go up here, there's no real documentation. It just goes, it loads a reload specific model. And I'm going, okay, well what's that mean? What do we do with that? And then we look at the accept. Accept says you're not supposed to read it, but does that mean we should read it down here in the load model? I don't even know how you actually access the whole thing at all. I do have a feeling like you're supposed to deserialize it. I think that I need to just go ahead and do more research here, rather than just torturing you guys with me sitting here trying to reverse engineer this code. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and I'm just going to poke at the Forge channel until somebody responds to my questions. And I will see you guys again later. Hopefully I'll get this done and we'll get it updated to the latest version. I can get it included in this mod pack I'm trying to get it stuck in. That way then I can show you guys gameplay, and it won't be exciting because we won't be doing ICBM and stuff, but we can show off some other mods and I can get my thought processes on mods and then maybe some future content and stuff like that. But yeah, so see ya.